Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
Boom! It's Thursday night, Gridiron Grinder time. That's right, we're doing it on a Thursday this week, and it is the NFL's Divisional Playoff Weekend up and coming. This is episode 81 of Gridiron Grinder, and so I'm Ryan. With me, as always, is my buddy James. Just a couple dudes hanging out, talking about what's going on in the NFL each week. And so for tonight, we're going to start things off with Name That Stadium like we always do. Then we're going to do our recap of the news from the past week. After that, we'll give you guys an update on where we're at with our game picks and our playoff bet. And then we'll get into our game picks for this weekend for the upcoming NFL Divisional Playoff games. And then lastly, we'll close it off with the question of the week. And so, with all that being said, how's it going tonight, James?
It's going good. How's it going with you?
It's going pretty good, man. I will say this. I mean, obviously, you're ahead of me on the picks, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I kind of felt like the wild card games, for the most part, were a bit of garbage. And maybe I'm being harsh. I'm saying that regardless of my picks and how that played out, it just seems like I'm hoping this isn't an every year thing, but I think it's because of the extra teams in the playoffs. You're just seeing like these games have such a wider, I don't know. It just seems like the top teams are just crushing the bottom teams. Like they're not close enough, and it made for some bad football. And then like I mean the Dallas game I guess was a little different. That was more just sloppy, undisciplined football. But I don't know, like Tampa Bay and Philly, it just they weren't even really matchups, man. Some of these games, just my opinion.
No, I agree. This year was a weird year. I just when you mentioned that, I looked back at last year, and it looks like four of the six games were within. I actually, you want to five of the six games were within two touchdowns. Like three of them were within one touchdown.
Okay. Well,
So it feels like this year. I think this year the issue is there was just such a disparity between like the top team and or the basically the favorites because mostly all favorites won
hmm
except for the one. But it's like there's such a difference on how they were playing down the stretch. One or two of the teams really weren't playoff teams this year, but ended up making it because they got lucky.
yeah. Yeah, and maybe that's all it was. Maybe next year I'll feel better about it. I just kind of thought, man, I don't know. Some of these games just they were not playoff football caliber, in my opinion. Um, I mean, that fucking Rams game, that was playoff football defense right there. But a lot of the other stuff just I don't know, just bad play. But that's all right. Let's move it on here and let's do name that stadium. So for anybody who's watching, this is the part of the show where, as you can see, James is out there traveling the country. Every week he's got a different stadium in his background. Typically, it's a stadium for a home team that's got a game this weekend. And we're just asking if you think you know what stadium that is, hit us up in our comments section. First person to get it right gets a shout out next week's show. So James, where were you at last week, man?
Last week I was in Cincinnati for the Raiders Bengals game. I just thought it was the best game of the weekend, and it's sad that it was the first game of the weekend, and I think it lived up to that as as being the best game of the weekend. Best both teams played, I thought, excellent. Burrow and the Bengals obviously won, but I thought I thought there was minimal mistakes on either side. I mean, some penalties with the Raiders creeped up, but outside of that, there weren't any or many bad coaching calls or stupid plays at the wrong time, stuff like that.
I gotcha. Well, hey, that was a good pick. And yeah, it was a good game. All right, good stuff. Well, let's move on here. Let's do our recap of the past week. And so, James, I'm a little bit slacking on the news. We'll do some of it on the fly here, but why don't you tell me some of the big things that you picked up on from this past week?
Well, one of the big things is players coming back from IR. You got Henry who's supposed to be back or possibly back. They're going to make a determination tomorrow, I guess. You had defense Zadarius, what's his last name? Smith
Yeah. For the Packers, yep.
for the Packers coming back. I mean, it's just a lot of injury news coming out of the weekend. It's good that Bosa was able to um, participate in practice. I think he was a limited participant, but that means he's back from the concussion protocol, so that should help San Francisco. And it's, the coaching carousel. That's about it, really.
Okay. Yeah, I did see Willie Gay was arrested for some type of criminal damage charge, and I didn't read up on it, but it makes me wonder how that'll affect his status for this weekend with that happening. Um, but you know, and then we got the some of the Dallas stuff with Mike McCarthy, and let's save some of that for later because I think that's going to tie into our question of the week. But there's been some rumors there, and then some stuff coming out of their executive offices about him coming back and yada yada yada. But yeah, we can catch that towards the end of the show. Talk a little bit more about that. Um, all right. Well,
I
I'm
think
good.
it's the Willie Gay news this week.
I just caught it just a little while ago, and so I didn't have a chance to read the article, but I saw he got some kind of, it was like criminal. It was a misdemeanor. It wasn't like a felony thing. I mean, if it was a felony thing, I'm sure he'd be in jail right now. But um, yeah, so I don't know. I don't know how bad that was or what exactly happened, but we can figure that out later.
This is actually, this might be very bad for him.
Okay.
I'm just glancing at it, like the charges or the damages. He was charged with criminal damage of less than $1,000 for the damaged property included a vacuum cleaner, a wall, and a door frame. Which that doesn't seem too bad, but under um, Kansas or not Kansas City, Missouri state law. Is it Missouri, Johnson County? Yeah. Oh, no, Kansas state law. Sorry. It's the border. I wasn't sure which side it was on, but anyways, under Kansas state law, the charges are considered domestic violence.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so yeah, that there would be some league action.
Yeah, because they have that whole domestic violence policy. So that might not be very good for him.
Yeah, not just going to shrug it off. There's going to be something there. Just makes me wonder, will they act quick enough so that I guess we find out if he's going to be playing or not this weekend. You know,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
I know sometimes the league likes to wait and do their investigation and get more information on it, but yeah, that'll be a factor, I'm sure.
That'll be
Uh,
interesting if the league doesn't act on it because they in the past when like just charges came out, they put them. It's the commissioner's exempt list,
yeah.
and so but they didn't do that with Deshaun Watson all season. So generally, they put the player on the commissioner's exempt list while they do their investigation, which causes them to not be able to play, but they don't cost a roster spot. Roster
Hmm.
spot. But so it'll be interesting to see what the league does with it. I don't think this this late in the week. I'm not certain that they will do something. They might push it to next week and hope it just kind of takes care of itself by the Chiefs being eliminated.
I got you. Yeah, and then yeah, you can't say it was a factor if it didn't help him win, but yeah, I got you. All right, well, we'll see how that shakes out. Let's move it on here and let's do like a recap of this past week with our playoff picks, talk about where we're at with the bet, and then we'll go from there. And so, you know, I'm having flashbacks of last year, man. I won the regular season, and then right off the bat, you're kicking my ass in the playoffs. Uh, Thankfully, it's not as drastic as last season. Um, I don't know. Maybe that's just how it's going to be between the two of us. But either way, I got some work to do, and you ended up nailing all your picks, and so that was rock solid. Um, I got two of them wrong, and so we're sitting at you with 21 points, me with 16 points. Basically, we each picked one upset, and I picked the wrong one. You picked the right one. So kudos to you. And, I can already tell from looking at our picks for this week, there's either going to be a swinging of the pendulum or I will for sure be out of it. So it's going to be a little bit exciting there. But, you know, looking at this past week with some of these games, man, like what did you like? What did you dislike? Anything like that? I mean, I know we talked about Dallas. That game was just so sloppy. I mean, I can't believe a playoff team could be that disciplined, undisciplined. It was just a horrible showing.
So I have to. The thing that really annoyed me about the Dallas game, and I have to look up the timing of the play real quick, is that last play where, I mean, first of all, Dak Prescott doesn't know the fucking rules
Yeah,
and hands the ball to his center when he should have turned around. The umpire or whatever field position is running up because you have to end the previous play. The rule clearly states that it has to be touched by an official and marked by an official. You can't just mark it yourself, which is what Dak tried to do. And I mean, just like that whole situation. Okay, you want to call that play, Dak? You have the ability. Probably not supposed to. I will say that as a quarterback, maybe you're not getting the leeway. You have the fucking ability to say no. We're not going to do this bullshit. I shouldn't run the ball. We have to get the ball to the end zone. So it was
yeah, and I will
14
say this.
seconds left.
Yeah,
They
and they had that weird, um, what was it, like that weird punting situation where they had the fake punt and then they kept the punt team out there. And didn't they have that happen earlier in the game where they tried switching out the punt team and bringing the offense in, and the ref couldn't set the ball and they had to delay a game? It was like you guys already had this happen, man, in the same game.
that one wasn't because the ref couldn't set the ball. Is by rule, except for under 2 minutes. I think it's 2 minutes at the end of the quarter or end of the half at the end of the game. You don't have this. But by rule, if you substitute players, your opponent needs or is given the chance to match.
Yeah,
So you can't snap the ball basically until I think it's the umpire that stands back with the ref. He stands behind the centers and until he moves out of the way, you can't snap the ball. So you
yeah.
can't do a switch with like 5 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah,
And
that's all I'm saying is that they should have known. You got to have more time for that kind of stuff.
yeah, and it's just, but that's a lot of what I've seen with Dallas all year. I mean, I've talked about it before. Like, in our power rankings, I kept downgrading Dallas because of coaching, and
Yeah.
we'll get more into that. But I'm assuming, but it's just what I've seen all year with them.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was poor showing on their part. And it's amazing for winning 12 games. I mean, that was just an embarrassing way to go out. But, um,
And
you
then
know,
the flip side, you have Buffalo.
yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Buffalo's
Buffalo
offense
just,
played like basically a perfect game.
yeah, Buffalo, honestly, that game reminded me of early season 2020 Josh Allen when he
Hmm.
was just like doing this ridiculous stuff like every week, and people were like, "What? Where the hell did this come from?"
Yeah, but I think it was, if I don't remember the year, but like in a long fucking time, it might even be like in the Super Bowl era, the first time that a team didn't turn the ball over, kick a field goal, attempt a field goal, or turn the ball over like on downs or by an interception fumble, or punt the ball in a game. They had what, 9 offensive possessions, 7 of them ended in touchdowns, the two that didn't end in touchdowns were they took a knee to end the half or end the game.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive, man. That's for sure. And they spanked the Patriots by 30. I mean, that on its own is, you get a freaking medal for that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and then I saw this is just an NFL.com thing I saw with the Raiders Bengals game, the first playoff game in NFL history where each team had 4+ field goals made. I mean, that's just kicking them, dude.
Yeah.
Like it goes to show, man, kicking matters, dude. You got to have a good kicker.
Hmm.
Okay, so I don't know. That's all I got. If you want to move it on, I'm ready to move on. Or if you got any last input there before we move on, what do you think, man?
It's just a little bit on Arizona. It's
Yeah,
I
that was a poor showing too, man. I mean, that was fucking. They barely ran the ball in the first half. It's like, come on, like you gotta. It seemed like they got into desperation mode way, way too fast.
well that I think the problem with Arizona is Kingsbury.
Okay,
I honestly do. Like for as much talent as that team has, he's in the NFL. He's a 500 coach. I don't even know if he's 500. He might be below. They start all every year. Even take it back to when he was at Texas Tech. I think it was Texas Tech or Texas A&M, whichever one. Teams would start out hot, when the first like in college, win the first like 5, 6 games, and then win one game the rest of the season.
yeah,
And it's the same thing with the Cardinals now. Is they start off hot. Heck, they started 7-0
oh yeah,
or 7-1, something like that,
yeah,
and then ended
yeah.
up what was their final record? 10-6.
Yeah, they just like slumped in, man. It was bad, and no, and that was a poor choice on my part to pick them in that game last week, knowing that the momentum was the other way. And we even talked about it, that they were totally different trajectories, and yet I still fucking picked them because I couldn't get on board with picking Stafford's team. But um, and I kind of thought, man, Kyler Murray just ultra competitive. Maybe he'll find a way to fucking get him the win, but. God, that was such a bad game. And I mean, it was like, and they were even talking about it in the game. How come they're not giving James Conner the ball? And it's like, it was bad, man. So bad.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's move on. Let's move on. Let's do our divisional playoff weekend game picks. This is where the action picks back up, James. And so, looking at Saturday, we've got two games. First one is the Cincinnati Bengals at the Tennessee Titans. Who do you like there, man?
I'm gonna put a caveat on this pick that I still have to get the injury news on Derrick Henry and look at that is because I have them as very close if Henry is playing. I have the Bengals as killing Tennessee if Henry isn't playing, and that's where it hinges on is Henry playing? What's the projection for him? But right now, I mean, Joe Burrow's playing too good. Cincinnati's that offense, that defense, they're kind of humming a little bit and just dominate. It's not dominating teams, but they're being they've been just bleh.
They look like
Can't
they belong. I know what
thank
you're
you,
getting at.
thank you. And so I'm gonna go with the Bengals, but I'm gonna put it as my least confident pick at 3 points because I'm just I go back and forth on this game.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, and this matchup definitely makes me nervous. Especially because I'm already in a hole with our picks, but. Like you're saying, Cincinnati, they've been solid in a lot of different facets. The passing game obviously has been freaking awesome this year. Mixon in the running game, they've been doing solid, especially as the year went on. And then defensively, they've like way outperformed, I think, what almost everybody was expecting defensively. And that's been one of the big difference makers for them. But I'm going to put my trust in Mike Vrabel, and I'm going to just assume that they're getting Derrick Henry back for that game. And if he can shoulder the full load, I think they can control the game, they can control the clock. And, on top of that, when I look at the matchup, I think Tennessee is a stronger team in the trenches both ways. And I think that that's a huge factor in the playoffs. And so I'm going with Tennessee. And since since I'm down here, I'm already making some risky moves, but I'm putting my six on this game, my big pick here. So let's see how it goes, man. Next up, we got the San Francisco 49ers at the Green Bay Packers.
So I'm most confident in this game, and the argument for San Francisco is in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers is 0-3 against San Francisco, and yada yada yada, blah blah blah. You just have to look to earlier this season. Earlier this season, San Francisco and Green Bay played, and it was at San Francisco, and the and Packers won the game. The strength for San Francisco is if Bosa and Warner is back,
Yeah.
because that defense can be solid. But where you can exploit the San Francisco defense is the Packers' strength with Devontae Adams. In the passing game, deep threats, that's where you can exploit San Francisco. And I see that's what Green Bay did in the first game, and I see them doing it again in this game, and the Packers winning the game.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm going to go with the 49ers. And, last week I was saying that Dallas could expose that defense, and it ended up not working out that way at all. And some of that's because obviously Dallas shot themselves in the foot. But I did think that defense played fucking rock solid football. And that's, maybe it's me just kind of going to the whole defense wins championship thing. But I when I saw that 49ers defense last week, I thought, damn man, that's what I needed to see to feel good about this team. And I think offensively, they can run the ball whatever way they want. It's weird the gimmicky stuff with Debo Samuel, but they are one of the top rushing teams, and Shanahan's ultra creative with drawing up those kind of plays. Jimmy G looked good despite the thumb, and so I think there can be a pretty good upset here. And you know, it, part of it, I think, is that, when I think about Green Bay, it's like sometimes these teams, they finish the year and it's almost like they're sitting idle. It's like, they just, it seemed like those last few games, they weren't like cutting people's throats, and even that Lions game, I know that half the game they had their backups in, but even when their starters were in, it was like they just weren't going full throttle, or if they were, it was a poor showing. And so I don't know. I think it's worth rolling the dice. So I'm going to go with San Francisco here, and I'm going to slap a 4 on it. Kicking it over to Sunday, we've got the Los Angeles Rams at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
So this one's going to be my 5. And when you look at this game, the way to beat Brady is you get to him.
Oh yeah,
I say that all the time. The Rams have the defense that can get to them. You look back to earlier in the year, was it 34-24? Was it 34-24? Something like that. 34-11. Nope, that was win over the Cardinals. Why am I not? I had it in my notes, but I'm not finding it.
That's fine.
Anyways, you have some questions on the offensive line for the
Bucks.
You have
Yep.
Wirfs with the ankle injury, and Jensen, who I don't think they practiced this week. I'm not certain.
No, I don't
that.
think. I think as of today they've not practiced, and so
Yeah,
there's some hope that they could get in one tomorrow and be good to go for the weekend, but it's not looking good right now.
and I looked it up, and I was right on the score. It was 34-24.
Okay.
And granted, that was in Los Angeles. This game's in Tampa. I just see the Rams, as long as Stafford plays like he played last week, not reverting back to his the Lions version of Stafford, and I don't think he will. Like he's got that first playoff win under his belt, and I think that's going to give him a load of confidence coming into this game, and he knows he's going to have to be on it because he's playing the goat. But I'm going to go with the Rams on this game.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I'm doing the same thing. I'm picking the Rams. I'm slapping a 5 on it, and it's for all the same reasons that you're saying. They're going to be able to get pressure on Brady. And I mean, come on, that's the Giants Super Bowl wins. That's what it was. Get pressure on Brady, and that's how you can get to him and you can win that game. Um, the Rams are just they're the most stacked solid team in this playoff right now. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Buffalo looked pretty goddamn badass, but um, I just like the talent all around both sides of the ball with the Rams, and their defense definitely was lights out last week. That's Super Bowl defense right there, and so I got to go with the Rams, reluctantly, but I'm doing it. And so last game, we got the Buffalo Bills at the Kansas City Chiefs.
So this game, the way I see this game happening is you had that ridiculous performance against the Patriots last week, but where Josh Allen had his most success last week was in play action passes. And if you dive deep into the stats on this, the Kansas City opponents had the most success against the defense with play action passes.
Oh, getting
Total,
analytical.
total this season, they allowed the third most. They allowed the third most in the NFL to their opponents on the play action pass and almost 1,600 yards. And also, their opponents had the best for play action pass, the best QBR,
Okay.
which was 80.2. And however they factor QBR, it's a statistic. But as long as Buffalo keeps that play action pass going, it looks like also Buffalo they got Singletary rolling. Finally, I mean we've been waiting 2 years for them to get Singletary rolling in that offense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's about time. Yeah.
you go back to earlier in the year. It was 38-20 that Buffalo. Yeah, 38-20. Buffalo beat Kansas City earlier. Yeah, Kansas City is a lot better than that team that played in that game, but Buffalo is also that much better. So I'm going to roll with the Bills.
I hear you on that, man. And so I'm going Kansas City because it does me no good to mimic your picks. And so, when I was looking this originally, my gut was telling me take Buffalo. But I just kind of thought, man, Kansas City finished the season so hot. Like you said, different from where they were at earlier in the year. Um, I think Buffalo has a little bit more talent depth wise and a little bit of a higher ceiling, maybe more potential. And a lot of that's because the Buffalo defense is better. But, we have seen some inconsistency with that defense this year, and some of it at the end of the season. And then, I could just see these two quarterbacks. Josh Allen has shown some of his nerves in the playoffs before. And I think if it's a close game, some of that could happen again. I think Mahomes is going to be more composed. He's already won the big game. He just shows time and time again in the playoffs, he can get it done. I think he's only got one playoff loss or whatever. And so um, maybe that's minus the Super Bowl. Yeah,
Yeah,
so two.
it's true. He lost to the
Um,
Patriots, and both losses are to Tom Brady.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah, there you go. So yeah, so we'll just say it's one because it's just against Tom Brady. But no, but either way, I'm going to go with Kansas City here, and anything could happen, man. I mean, this could be, Mahomes can score against any defense, and it's rare that they slow him down. It happened last year in the Super Bowl, but these two opponents, I think he's got a chance, and so I'm going to give it to the Chiefs. Man, that was so fast.
Yeah,
That's that's where we're at in the season. We get so used to just burning through so many games, and now all of a sudden it's like, "Boop, that's all we got, folks." But that's okay. We still got our question of the week, James, and so we can milk this bad boy for all it's worth. And I know I previewed some of this to you earlier in the week when I was hitting you up on the messenger, but basically the question, and we can spin it whatever way we want just to get some juice out of it. But um, do you see a scenario where Pete Carroll ends up in Dallas? And I'll give you my take before you jump in, because I always got to give you my 2 cents first. But you know when they lost, it was obvious. Jerry Jones was frustrated, really disappointed. He said a lot of that kind of stuff to the press because he doesn't hide that kind of thing. Since then, some of the executives within the Cowboys organization have come out, said that they fully expect McCarthy to be back. McCarthy is saying basically he feels like he's safe, but we all know Jerry Jones is one unpredictable motherfucker. And with him being emotional and upset about this and the clock ticking on his time to get a ring, post Jimmy Johnson era, which, it seems like everybody kind of has that cloud hanging over him from back in the day. I think he could do something crazy because he's just a crazy guy. But I think the only way he does something crazy is if there's a splash kind of a move. And Pete Carroll might be on the outs in Seattle if they decide that a trade makes sense with Russell Wilson. I could see Pete Carroll saying, "Forget this, I'm out of here," and making the move. And something like that could be appealing to Jerry Jones, where he could go back on whatever the organization's word is because he feels like, okay, I'm getting that higher caliber, option that could make it happen next year. Um, and then, this one we didn't really talk about, but I kind of thought it's along those same lines. And I think it's, not likely, but I think, there's like the teeniest little bit of chance. Could be something with Sean Payton because he's been linked to the Cowboys in the past. And I'm sure he would love the chance to have a real quarterback again. Because obviously the Saints, that was sort of their Achilles this year. They had the great defense. They got Kamara. They were missing wide receivers, but it didn't matter. The quarterback, the Jameis Winston injury and everything else happened. I could see him wanting out if they could find a way to work a deal. And if anybody's going to work a deal, it's Jerry Jones. He'll wheel and deal and open up that checkbook and do whatever he can to get what he wants. And so, I don't know. That's my 2 cents, man. What do you think?
Well, in terms of McCarthy, how many times has an organization said or put their backing behind a coach and then turn around and fire them? I mean, didn't that just happen with what's his face from Houston? Like they put
It happened with the Giants with Joe Judge. They were like, "Yeah, we're bringing him back," and then like 3 weeks later, they fired his ass.
What's his face? It's not Sirianni, it's the other Culley, David Culley.
Yeah.
In Houston, and I think it happened in Miami too. I thought they had put some support behind Flores and then fired his ass. So I mean, it happens all the time. You look at the Raiders. They're kind of talking internally about behind whatever.
Bisaccia, however you say his name. Yeah. But I mean, they're backing him, but then they're also, in my opinion, clearing the path for Harbaugh by getting rid of Mayock, man.
Yeah, because honestly, what the fuck is the organization going to say besides, "Oh, we're behind our coach"? Because what happens if that coach isn't out there, or that coach you find out is not available, or stuff like that? Like I think like another one is I think Denver. Denver had kind of put a little bit of support behind Fangio, and then fired him after the regular season or their last game. It's just what else are you gonna say besides, "Yeah, we're behind the coach"? Because if you say anything else and you don't fire the coach, then
I guess
just cut his legs out from underneath him.
I guess I would I don't know. Some of them I think you could be more convicted. Like the Joe Judge thing, I mean, that was just confusing. That's like, why would you even hesitate? I mean, you could freaking just randomly hire a guy and them do just as good as he did. Like it just promote the fucking towel boy and you're
Hmm.
in good shape there. So I don't know. I guess I would feel confident that there's a lot of good coaches out there, and if you're not getting the results that you want, try it. And I think that if you have, any doubt about the guy, and you're like secretly maybe shopping, like putting out some feelers, eventually that gets back to him. You got a disgruntled coach on your hand, and I think that next season's a disaster anyhow. So you might as well just go all in and go and find a guy. But I hear what you're saying. If you're, I think that what you're saying applies big time in the quarterback world. If you got
Hmm.
an Andy Dalton, it's hard to get rid of him because there's so many quarterbacks that suck worse than Andy Dalton. But it's like at some point, geez, man, you just got to say, hey, we appreciate everything he's done, but he's not what we want. We're just going to try something else. And then you just fucking hope for the best. Like you give it your best effort, scout the shit out of everybody, and hope you find your diamond in the rough. I don't know, just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I just think it's like you kind of also if you fire him like right away, like after that loss, and as pissed off as Jerry Jones was with that, it looks more like a knee jerk reaction, unstable Dan Snyder type reaction versus
Yeah.
well thought out. Let me evaluate it, and we've decided we're going to move on from the coach.
No, and that's a good strategy, but then say it. We're going to evaluate everything with this team, top to bottom. There's nothing wrong with saying that. Um, and honestly, it makes him sweat a little bit. Makes McCarthy sweat a little bit. 'Cause it's like that fucker should sweat after that game, man. That was embarrassing, dude. They had like fucking what, 14 or 15 penalties, like in a fucking playoff game, man. Like, oh, jeez.
Was that it? 14 or 15?
And dude, some of them came right down to the end. They could have gotten the ball back. I mean, they just, yeah, I mean, they did get the ball back, but they could have got it back with more time. And it just was like, oh gosh, it was a disgrace.
Uh, I'm, I'm kind of curious now how many actual penalties I had in that game.
It was like tied for the most this season, or maybe like the most in the playoffs. It was horrible, dude. It was, or like one away. It was like it was up there, man.
Yeah, I would look it up real quick, but it was just ridiculous, and the team looked unprepared
Yeah.
in the game. That's what gets me is how much that team, how much it felt like that team they were unprepared for the game.
Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah. Yeah, and so while you're looking that up, I'll just do the quick little deal here at the end of question of the week. So for anybody who's watching, just like name that stadium, hit us up, give us your thoughts on question of the week. Can you see a scenario where Pete Carroll ends up in Dallas, or even another coach? Tell us what you think, and we love to get that dialogue going, man.
Wow, it was only 14.
Only 14, only 14. That's more than three a quarter, James. That's you know, yeah, pretty shitty.
Yeah.
But yeah, hey, that's all I got for tonight, man. You got anything that you wanna get in here since we just burned through it? Our normal hour and a half shows, we're sitting at 38 minutes right now.
I don't, I don't think so. I think that was it.
All right. No, hey, we got there. No reason to filibuster, James. Not to get political here. Um, yeah, next week we can put a little more emphasis on the news if we want, but it's all good. So for anybody who's still watching, we hope you like the show. If you did, give us a thumbs up, shoot us some comments, whatever you can do. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We appreciate the support, James. Like always, man, it was a good time. I will catch you later.
All right, have a good one.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut hut hike.